Greetings my friends, how are you doing? This is Zeb from Zed Outdoors and I hope you're having an awesome day. So I'm currently attending the Bentley Wood Fair, which is an amazing festival, all things wood related, be it season wood, green wood and forestry related. It's an amazing event held in the south of England. It's an event I'll actually link to in the description below should you want to find out more about the event. Now being at this festival over this weekend, I bumped into a good friend of mine that we actually met online. His name is Allan Brown, and Allan is an expert when it comes to processing flax and nettle for the intention of using it for a myriad of uses, be it textiles, cordage, etc. And this is actually a process has actually been around in some shape or form for thousands of years, and it's a very, very rare skill that kind of very few people have. And I remember seeing Allan doing it online on another video, and it was awesome that I met him here and we kind of got talking, and he's very kindly taken the time out to record a video where he's going to talk through the process of what he has to do. So I hope you enjoy this video where Allan is going to demonstrate how to process flax for a myriad of traditional uses. So here we are guys with a friend of mine, Allan. Allan, how you doing?
Yeah, good man, really nice to see you, Zed.
You too as well, you too. I appreciate you taking the time out. I know it's going to be a busy day today for you at the event. One thing I will say to the viewers, my apologies if you hear background noise. This is obviously a public event, so obviously, you know, it's the beginning of the day, so things are going to kick off, so you will hear background noise. So Allan, like I said, I do appreciate you taking the time to talk about this. Do you want to talk about the origins itself of kind of, you know, the processing flax and then using it for a myriad of uses?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm no historian on the subject, but it seems as though flax in its wild form, humans have been using for 40,000 years plus. It's one of those plants that's sort of been discovered that had wicked cordage in it, and I think it's probably one of the first plants that was actually cultivated specifically by us. So flax has been with humans for a long, long time, and its Latin name, which I can't recall off the top of my head, means the most useful plant, and it really is. Its seeds are useful for eating, making oils, and full of fibres as well, the actual plant. So yeah, a very, very useful plant, and one we would have adopted early on.
So is this the original form here that we're looking at over here?
No, the terminology is all a little bit complicated. In America they call it flax all the way through, so you get flax oil, flax seed. In England or Europe we tend to call flax the sort of unprocessed plant, and then the finished item then becomes linen, although linen could refer to a number of different materials, but traditionally linen is associated with flax. But you also grow two types of linseed. It's all the same plant, it's just been hybridized different ways. So the one you still see growing in fields around England and the UK these days is the short form of flax, which is grown specifically for the seed, which you're going to use for oils and what have you. And it's the same plant, but it's hybridized to be tall, and that's the one you're going for with fibre. And that you don't see grown in the UK hardly anymore. The industry sort of fell away in the 50s. But there are still flax growing regions. France, Belgium, Holland have always traditionally been big growers of flax. So yeah, it's the same plant, but just used differently.
So here you've got a display here. Is this all the stuff that's eventually been processed? So
that's
this is
right.
Kind of like the end products?
Yeah, that's it. So this is the fibres hidden away on the plant. So basically the process you take it through is just to get rid of the stuff you don't want and just be left up with the line fibres. And yeah, so because they're very, very long fibre compared to something like cotton, which is a very short fibre, because of its length, it can be both spun really fine and it's also very, very strong. So yeah, it was the traditional material for if you're making rugs or weaving, that sort of thing. Flax is a very good warp thread to use.
So with this end product, basically you can use it for just a myriad of things, basically.
That's right.
From cordage to textiles to...
Exactly. I mean, there's all, as we'll see as we go through this process, there's different grades of flax that you come out, and you just adjust what you're going to use it for accordingly. So this is your very finest stuff. So really, this is what you'd be saving this to use for weaving, you know, clothes that you would wear, stuff against the skin. It's going to be very, very smooth. And also the traditional things, tablecloths and you know, pillowcases, sheets, that sort of thing. very, very hard wearing. You know, linen gets passed down through generations. So it's once you've got it woven, it lasts a long time. It's very durable. But yeah, I mean, you can make cordage. You make rope out of it. Basically, everything you would need in your daily life. In terms of cordage and yarn, people would have grown themselves, had just small pockets of their gardens or areas of common land where you just put a little bit of flax in, and that would keep you going, you and your family going for the year.
So this is obviously harvested flax, isn't it? In
That's
its
right,
original
yeah.
state.
So this is flax that I've grown up my allotment, and this was the first year I ever tried it, and it was beginner's luck. I got a very good crop out of it. It was very easy to grow. Just sowed the seeds, and then that was it. Literally, I didn't even have to water. A little tiny bit of weeding, a bit of bindweed growing up it, but essentially you just let it do its thing, and it's about 100 days, and it starts to give this beautiful blue flower. And if you're obviously growing linseed for the seed, you'd let the seeds mature all the way. With flax, the fibres are ready before the seeds are fully ripened. So you're normally pulling it up, and so the seed you get off it isn't really viable. You'd normally just leave a corner of your patch of flax to mature fully, and that would be your seed for the following year. So yeah, when it's ready, the flowers are starting to fade and the seed heads are starting to form at the top, you make a call and you just pull it. And the thing with flax, it's a very shallow plant, rooted plant. So this is the roots down this end, and you literally just tug it out the ground and it just comes out as easy as anything. And so you just pull it out the ground and then tie it up in bundles, and you've got a number of ways of how you're going to do it. Once it's dried, you could just store it until such time as you're ready to ret it. Otherwise you can just go straight for the retting process. This is all nuances that we're just working out, which works best for us. What I do is, after I've picked it, the first thing you have to do is take the seed heads off. And in order to do that, you just put it through a little block with some nails in, you just drop it in and pull it, and it just flicks all the seed heads off. And you can save those, there'll be some seed in there. But yeah, largely once you've done that, the next step in the process is called retting, and this is true with whether you're dealing with nettles or hemp or any of the bast fibres. And so what you're basically doing is, in flax, the fibres is the very outer part of the plant, and inside it is this core, and you're really wanting to get rid of the core and just be left with the fibres. But when it's just freshly harvested, the fibres and the core are sort of bound together with these pectins, a sort of gluey thing that holds it all tight. So you want to try and break that down, and retting is just an old word for rotting. So you're just basically introducing bacterial action, and just so the plant's starting to break down, the fibres are loosening up, and it's it's a bit of an art knowing when it's ready.
And with that, what does that actually entail? Does that entail leaving it on the grass?
Yeah, there's two different ways. There's the faster way, and one arguably that gives you better, finer fibres, is water retting, and that would be either submerging the bundles underwater in a pond or in a slow flowing stream. But it's quite a smelly process, and traditionally flax growers were pushed out to the margins of anywhere because retting is quite a stinky business. However, you can also dew ret, which is the way that we go for just because it's a lot simpler, and that just involves spreading the stems out on the grass and just letting the morning and evening dew wet it. And it's a bit slower. It takes maybe 3 weeks as opposed to a few days, but it's very manageable. You're not going to lose it so quickly. With water retting, it's quite easy. If you keep it in the water too long, you might find that your fibres have degraded. But this way, you can just keep checking, just keep turning it over. And what you're checking for, to see when it's ready, is you just pick up a few stems, and you're just going to do it by hand. You just sort of fiddle around with the plant, scrunch it up, and you see the stuff's falling away as the core, and immediately you've been left with the fibres. And really, if the stuff in the middle, which we'll call the shy or the pith of the plant, if that just falls away easy and is not sticking to the fibres too bad, that normally tells you it's ready. at which point you pick it up off the grass and you can just let it dry out in the sun, and you can store it indefinitely as long as it's not damp or wet. That will stay good. And in fact, with if you're spinning the fibres of flax, you normally just process as much as you're going to need in any given day or couple of days, because even though we've retted it and got rid of a lot of the pectins, there's still some in there, and when the fibres get damp, they sort of re-stick to each other. So if you go through all the steps of combing and separating the fibres, and then you stored them for a long time like that, they would all sort of glue back, and you just have to run them through the combs again. But yeah, the usual way is you just harvest in little bits and pieces, and it keeps it all manageable. So this is, as I say, this was retted last year, and it's just been sitting in an outhouse for the last year, and it's still all good. Nothing's gone for it or nibbled it. So once you've got a bit you want to process, you then got to start smashing it up really and trying to free the fibres from it. And the first step in that process is using something called a flax break. This is one I just knocked up myself, but really it can be as simple. You could just do it with a mallet. You could just have a couple of bits of wood like that, so it crunches down, and hit it with a stick, or smash it with your hand. Do it like that. It's just all these bits of kit are really just to make it that little bit more efficient, but the basic process is dead simple. You're just trying to lose the core of the plant in whichever way you can. In fact, if I just go and grab these little blocks.
So you've got the pieces here. Is this
and this little block's really just to demonstrate how simply it can be done. And with something like this, you're going to sort of smash this core up just manually, just by lifting and just using an edge of this block of wood just to break it up a bit.
So this is just basically a cruder way of just doing it.
Exactly right. Just to show that you don't need any expensive expensive bits of kit to do it. And obviously, originally we would have probably just processed it quite simply by hand. But you can see the shy is falling away just by manipulating it, and already that's getting softer, and you can see sort of bundles of fibre appearing. So what we'll do is I'll show you how it works through the flax breaker. So this is called a flax break, and basically it's just going to smash it up for us in a bit more of an efficient manner. Convention has it that you try and keep the root ends together and the seed head ends together, because apparently on a sort of microscopic level there is a certain twist to a flax plant, just the way it grows, so it wants to curve in a particular direction. So if you keep the ends clearly together all the way through, when it comes to spinning you can set it up the right way, and you'll be working with the natural twist of the fibre. Although that said, I think you have to be a lot better spinner than I to notice nuances like that. It doesn't seem to make much difference to me.
So with this process you're doing the entire flax basically, from top to bottom?
Yeah, this step in the process wouldn't work for nettles, for example. The nodes and the stiffness and hardness of the plant just makes it, well, you could do, but you'd need a much heavier break. I don't know much about hemp, but I've watched a few bits of footage of how it's done, and they seem to have a break that's almost like the size of a log, and it's a real big hefty smashing thing, that would work for nettles. But with this, it's actually quite a delicate plant, that it doesn't take much for that cord just to fall away. And what's coming out is termed a few things called shy, and that's used for animal bedding, horse bedding and stuff on an industrial scale, which is one of the beauties of this fibre, is that there's so little wastage, and really you could take it all the way through from seed to a finished yarn without even having used any additional water other than the rainfall for the plant to grow. and every bit of it is used. So compared to something like cotton, which is notoriously difficult to grow without pesticides and fertilizers and everything else, and the whole process takes loads of water to do. And I think that's part of the reason why flax is making a bit of a resurgence, because it's just environmentally a whole lot better way to go, and easy to go on a small level. You can literally, I grow this in my allotment, little corner of garden. You can do it, so you don't need any expensive equipment. And you can see now it's, with that core gone, it's starting to become much softer and more flexible. But I found that it's worth going for it at each stage. The more you can get out at each stage, the easier it gets.
So now that we worked through the first step of the process, Alan, what's the next step?
Okay, the next step is called scutching. There's all these great names to do with processing. And scutching is basically just the next step to just try and knock more of this loose shy away. And basically it's some sort of board, either with a V at the top, some way of protecting your hand. And then you use a scutching sword. And I made all the bits and pieces of broken axe handle, but it did give me an insight into, like, in Europe, Scandinavia, everyone would have made their own bits of kit out of what they had around the local blacksmith could knock up for them. So there's all loads of wonderful variations on how people did it, and anything that works, that's what you want, really. So for this, you just I thought it was a superfluous step when I was reading up on how the process works, but in actual fact it really is effective. And you're just sort of scraping down the fibres, and it knocks it out, but it also starts to align the fibres a bit, so it's kind of like a rough combing as well.
So at what point do you feel at this step of the process that you've kind of got to where you want to?
Really,
what is it you're looking for?
When stuff's stopping to fall, there's no more stuff really falling out of it. And if we go through it, you can see that the little bits that are stuck in still are just where the retting might not have been complete, or they're just tangled up a bit. But largely, the vast majority of the shy is out of there now. And I would say that that's probably good enough. I don't think we're going to get much more out of it.
So is this your circus trick where you're going to lay on top?
Exactly.
A bed of nails.
Yeah, woodland fakir. Yeah, so the final step in the process is called hackling. And these are called hackling combs, and they are basically just glorified combs. And I think that must be where the term dog's hackles are rising. It's referring to this. And basically these are, again, they could have been made a sorted of way, nails sticking up through old bits of wood. You see them in all different shapes and sizes. But yeah, for these ones I just used some mattress needles mounted in a block of wood. And so these are my widest setting. And basically you're just going to start pulling the fibres through that. And what it's going to do is pull out any tangled bits. And hopefully the last remaining bits of shy. So you basically were just dropping the end, but you start on the ends and you work in. And you can see what's been left behind are little bits that were tangled or doubled up on themselves. And you're pulling all that out. And there's really two terms to describe what you're left with when you're doing this process. In my hand, this will be called the line fibre. So this is going to be the finest, higher grade stuff. All the longer fibres will be left. And the stuff that gets caught in the combs is called the toe. and it's not wastage because all this is going to be used, but you'll just adjust what you're going to do with it. So this would be for the line fibre is going to be used for your clothes that you're going to wear, tablecloths, bed sheets, so anything that you need soft. And the tow you could use for a myriad of things. Perfect for making cordage, rope, sacking. I mean, I would definitely go back through this a couple more times. I mean, there's long line fibres in there that I'd immediately pull back out and just reintroduce into the bundle.
So it really is, in essence, working like a normal hairbrush, isn't
Exactly
it?
right. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, the amazing thing about flax fibres is the more you process it, the more and more hair-like they become, and that's where the term flaxen haired comes from. It's almost indistinguishable from hair.
Is this the secret to your long beard?
That's right. Flax seeds and
you realise it's the flax wastage.
I do have to use these on my beard. I tell you, no comb will cut it.
So there really is a lot that comes out, isn't it?
Yeah, working with all the fibres, the tow outweighs the line fibre quite significantly. But the fact that you can still use the tow is brilliant because there's no wastage as such.
So do you feel like it's almost ready now then?
Yeah, it's starting to run through. I can feel there's not that much catching now, so I would definitely say that step's done. I'd pull that toe off, and like I say, I'd go back through that, but I'll just put it behind me for the moment. And then what we need to do is just change hackles.
So that's the term for that, hackles?
Yes, that's right. So I go down to the next grade. They're just same sketch, just a bit closer together. And then you just go over again, and there should be less being pulled out each comb you move to.
So these are essentially just more closer together.
That's
so
right.
Much finer.
Yeah. Yeah, it's starting to slide through nice and easy now. So. Right, and then the final step will be to just use the finest set of hackles. And the fine set is just a set of dog combs, which interestingly, the guy I bought them off said the company that makes these dog combs was originally a hackle making business 100 years ago, and the bottom went out of the flax trade, so they moved over to using dog combs, making dog combs, and now their dog combs are becoming the bespoke hackling tool again. It's gone full circle.
So to reiterate, all this wastage is basically all going to be reused.
That's right, yeah. And I mean, this wastage is finer than the first wastage, so you could be quite organised and separate out the grades of tow.
Interesting.
And, keep it all organised that way. But yeah, and really the fine one. I mean, the job is largely done now, but there's just a few tiny little bits of where the core is still stuck to the fibre. Some of those you may just tug out when you're actually spinning it, but the more you can get out, the better. Really.
And once again, is that down to the retting? Is that
Yeah,
what
that's
primarily
right.
is down to?
Yeah, I mean, with retting, like I say, it's a balance between, because you're rotting, so all the time you're retting, the fibres are slowly degrading. So you just want a nice balance for ease of use and quality of fibre. So you're always going to get a little bit stuck, but really the majority is gone. And it's, yeah, over-retting's the worst, because then you chop it up and there's no fibres in there at all. And I find it much better to have fibres and have to do a little bit more work than lose them, which is really gutting.
And that, I guess, can only come with experience then, can it?
That's right,
The more you're doing it, the more you realise, okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same. I've really found that. Same with nettles, is the material totally teaches you. At the beginning I was like, oh, why can't someone just give me a definitive? It's 3 weeks retting and you know that's it. But it's everything's vague. I use your eye and you go, but I don't know what to compare it to. But yeah, after you've done it once, and you just keep checking the fibres, and if they're there, you know they're still there, and so you can gauge it from it. And I mean, I think this first year was beginner's luck for me, because this is actually really lovely flax I'm getting. And then when you've gone through this final set of hackles, that's it, that's what we're left with. It's a beautiful long line fibre, soft as hair. That much toe. But as I said, if I went back through this toe,
That's a lot of toe, isn't it?
yeah, and you can see there's some long fibres in there. So what I'd do is probably just spend a little bit of time just roughly aligning it back to itself, and then I would probably go back up a size of hackles and just go back through. You can see if I worked at that, that would be a little bit more to add back into the good pile. And also, the more stuff you can get out of the toe, the easier it is to work with that as well. And you can just do it by hand. It's just literally these last few stubborn bits of shy. Now, of course, if you wanted to make, the traditional sort of bushcraft cordage, this is going to be beautiful. And I'm not sure, I don't know much about archery, although I do know flax fibres do make good bowstrings, and I don't know whether they're primarily made from the long fine stuff or some of this stuff, but yeah, it's all really, really beautiful, good fibres.
So as an example, is this a sort of end product you can end up with once it's actually...
That's right. I mean, this is sort of fine Irish linen, and I presume was made on machines, but certainly people were capable of making this quality material for a long, long time. And it just gives you an example of how fine it can be spun. And you can see in the fibre just the different types of colour. Just that was from a different bundle I did earlier. I think that's the one we've just done. So there's goes from golden, white to a sort of brown. And normally with linen, I mean, you can dye it, you can totally dye it, but if that was spun and woven up, it would gradually move towards whiteness just by being left in the sun to bleach, and it's sort of basically weathered. And I've seen photos from Irish linen producing factories where they weave these big sheets, reams of material, and that's all spread out on the grass. And again, apparently there were watchtowers in the corner of these fields with guards 24 hours a day, so no one came and nicked the linen. And yeah, I think I've heard that it was left on the grass, and the grass would even grow up through it, just to bleach it out, sun bleach it and soften it up. So it will, over time, gradually move towards white. And again, that's a lovely quality because you don't need to bleach it. I mean, I imagine this would retain a bit of colour. You'd have to boil it in soda ash and stuff to get rid of it completely. But it's the range of colours you get are so beautiful. that really is, I like working with it just in its natural state. About how you would process the tow to spin with it, and one simple quick and easy way is you just pull a little bit out and just use a set of wool carders. And you basically just get a bit, spread it out on the card, on the brush, and just comb it out.
So these are ultra fine, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, like I say, these are wool carders, but they're fine with nettles and with flax. They're really useful for dealing with the tow, getting it into form that's handleable for spinning with. And what this does is it does brush out some of the shy, which is good, and it's basically just aligning the fibres roughly parallel to each other. But yeah, effectively it is like an even finer set of hackle combs. So that rough tangled tow, just with a bit of combing, is actually leaving you with some lovely fibres. A little bit of stuff in there, but we won't worry about that. And then basically what you just roll it back up on itself. And again, I could have spent a little bit more time brushing to get rid of those bits, but they aren't a big problem. And then yeah, just, I mean, for most of the history of humankind, this is how we've been spinning on drop spindles. The spinning wheel was only really a sort of medieval invention. So back in the day, everything, every bit of material, sails, tarps, coverings, all would have been spun, would have been woven from flax that's been spun this way. And again, I find spinning was just, I just love doing it, and I just think it's kind of one of those essential bushcraft skills that you should learn about. You could literally go out into the wild, spend a bit of time processing nettles, and if you had a drop spindle in your pocket, you could be creating thread to stitch and mend your clothes.
Do you know, that's a bushcraft skill I never thought about, you know?
Yeah, me neither. And we were talking earlier about the pectins that are still in that sort of gluey substance that's still in the fibres. And when you're spinning, well, in fact, most plant fibres, but if you spin them wet, add a little bit of moisture, they kind of cling, the fibres cling to each other, and plant fibres are all stronger when they're wet. Which is why they're good for sails and nets and stuff. But I just lick it and then add a bit of twist, and you just draft down a bit from your fluffy fibres up the top, and when it's about the right thickness for what you want, you just let the twist go up, and the twist just locks all the fibres together, and so rather than sliding past each other now, they're now locked in place. And you just draft the thickness that you want, really, and then you just let the twist go up.
So you're controlling the thickness.
That's right, yeah. You're forming the thickness and then you're locking it down, forming the thickness, locking it down. You just keep adding a bit of spin. I'm just going to wet it.
I just need to apologise about the chainsaw in the background. There is an actual demonstration going on where he's doing some carving with a chainsaw. So you were going to demonstrate, just very briefly, in terms of the spinning. Is this kind of like the alternate way of?
Yeah, so what I just really want to show you is how you cope with, once you've got your long line fibres, how you'd actually go about spinning it. And I remember looking at old paintings and stuff from the past, and you'd often see women standing next to these sorts of arrangements. I didn't know what it was, candy floss or what was going on. But this is called a disc staff, and they come in all shapes and sizes. But basically, it's just a way of organising your fibres in such a way that they're not going to. You spend so long combing them out, you don't want them to get all tangled and disorganised. So basically, what you do is when you've gathered enough of these line fibres, you sort of spread. Well, there's a number of ways you can deal with it, but this way in particular, you fan out the fibres in a semicircle, so you can see they're really spread out, and then you'd go across with another layer, spreading them out on top of that, and then another layer spreading it out. So you'd have this sort of crisscrossing network of fibres, and then you'd get a cone of some sort, and you just keep the tips of all your spread out held together, and then you just roll this along the table, and the fibres would basically spread out and just be gathered around the cone, and then you just tie them up to the top. And there's a whole rich symbolism to, like, if you were a married woman, you'd have a blue band, and if you were an unmarried woman, you'd have a red band. I mean, the thing that I've realised through getting into it is just how integral this would have been to our daily lives, just since time, through hundreds of generations. In order to produce enough yarn, in order to make the stuff you need, you really have to be going at it all the time. So you would be carrying a drop spindle around with you. Women would often carry a portable version of a disc staff, which they would just sit into a belt in their pocket, and you would literally go about your day with this hanging around. And if you
That's madness,
going down to feed the chickens, you would spin a bit on the way, and then you'd stop and chatting. Every spare moment you'd just use it to spin. But like I say, in the Middle Ages, when the spinning wheel started to make an appearance, it just marries up beautifully for using this. And what you do is you'd start your wheel spinning, and that would start adding twist to your fibre, and then you'd just take an end from your disc staff and just add it in and let a little bit of twist go up into the fibre, and then basically you're just using one hand. You can spin just using one hand, and I think back in the day people could use 2 spinning wheels and spin from either hand. But basically you're letting the twist go up into the fibres, and you're controlling it with your finger and thumb here, and you just open it slightly, and a little bit of twist will run up ahead and just grab the next bits of available fibres, and then you'd pull those down, and then you'd let the spin go up, it would grab the next bit and you'd pull. So it's like a continual feed, and you'd just spin, let the twist run up, spin, let it run up, and you could just go unbroken in one session, just start there, and by the end you would have used up all your fibre, and yeah, and it would all be as yarn on your wheel, and then you're ready to start doing whatever you want with it. Weaving, crocheting. And the thing about a plant fibre, and flax particularly, is because it's non-elastic at all, it's very good for setting the warp on a loom. It's strong, and if it's spun well, it's pretty smooth. And so because of its strength, you would often use this as the warp, even if you used wool as the weft. So you're making a rug, you would use a plant fibre of some sort as your underlying warp structure.
So there you go, guys, that is a wrap for this video. Alan, I can't thank you enough.
Thanks, Ed.
Seriously, he's taken a lot of time out to do this. He's got a busy day ahead of him doing demonstrations at the Bentley Wood Fair, but he very kindly took the time out to show the entire process. So seriously, thank you. Once again, apologies about the chainsaws in the background. I think there's like a chainsaw duel going on, chainsaw massacre. But this is a public event going on, so obviously there's a lot of stuff in the periphery. Now, in terms of connecting with Alan, now I believe you set up a Facebook group that's become quite popular, hasn't it?
Yeah, and that's really specifically dealing with nettles. It's called Nettles for Textiles, with a little film that a friend shot for me, showing the nettle process. But it's all inclusive, all fibres, plant fibres, that sort of thing. There's a space for that, and people, lots of knowledgeable people coming on and sharing their knowledge and skills. So.
Because it can be considered a bit of a niche thing, what kind of Alan is doing, but the popularity has grown massively in a short space of time. How many members has the group got? It's
5,500 plus sort of thing, just in a few weeks.
Yeah, and that was just in a few weeks. You know, that's how popular this kind of topic is. So needless to say, I'm going to put a link below to Alan's Facebook group. If there's something that interests you, which I think you should do, But you make that decision. If it's something that interests you and in and around this kind of topic, without a shadow of a doubt, go and check the group out. If you like what you see, then obviously join the group. I know I'm going to be joining. I'm going to partake in the discussions. This has opened my eyes up to kind of the possibilities that are out there using natural materials, whatever your end use may be it textiles, cordage, etc. So once again, Allan, thank you so much.
Thanks, Ed. Thanks for coming down.
For taking the time out. It's good to meet up in person. We've kind of connected online.
Indeed, yeah. Wow, I couldn't believe it. It was like YouTube coming to life before my eyes when we were kids. Ed.
Yeah, no, it was great. I've seen him online as well. So it was good to kind of meet up in person. Once again, thank you for taking the time out. So once again, I will put a link below to Allan's Facebook group. Please do go check that out. And I hope you enjoyed this video. Who knows, maybe in the future we might do another collaboration.
I'd love to.
Do some other stuff. He's part of a wider outfit based in Sussex in the south of England, and they're just doing some amazing stuff with textiles, from natural dyes, weaving, I mean, you name it, anything and everything to do with it. And they're here today and they've opened my eyes up, as well as Allan, in terms of the myriad of things that you can do. So who knows, hopefully in the future we may delve a little bit more deeper into that. So hope you enjoyed the video. As always, please do connect with me on Instagram. I've posted up pictures and photos from my time here with Allan that show things up in a lot more kind of detail. I'll put a link below to Allan's Facebook group. Please do go check that out. And as always, from Allan and myself, I hope whatever you're doing, you have a blessed day, a blessed week ahead. Peace out.